Well, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and it just hasn't happened, so I'm just going to haul off and do it. Start telling some of these stories, some of these amazing things that God has done in my life and is doing. I want to give my testimony, but everybody's got a testimony, and it's really the supernatural stuff I want to focus on, because I don't think everybody has these experiences that I've had. A lot of people want them, but not a lot of people have had them. And it's not because I'm good or special, or it's just what happened. It started happening probably 12 years ago. I mean, on a consistent basis, when I was, when I first believed God, that was a supernatural experience. Like, I just cried out to Him, and He heard me and showed up and delivered me from the bondage that I was in with drugs and alcohol and a broken marriage, and He restored our family and put me on the right track and used me in a lot of regular ways. I mean, important ways, but we started going to church in 1990, and then my parents died in 94, which was a big setback for me. Both my parents dying like 6 weeks apart, because I thought that nothing bad happened to Christians. But I found out the hard way that, yes, indeed, bad things can happen to us. But God used it to move me forward, because I was very legalistic in the beginning. And I was listening to the wrong voices. I just thought there was one way of being a Christian. So if, you turn on the Christian radio, you'll get that version. Or if you go to a church, you'll get that version, like there was just one. In my naivete, or whatever the word is. But I found out, no, there's many, many, many versions. And you get to pick which one you want to become a part of, what fits you best, what is, and you might get moved around, I guess. Like what works at one time won't work at another, or you grow out of it, or I don't know. We were at this particular church we went to, a mega church in Milwaukee area, for 20 years, 25 years, raised the kids there. It was an awesome place, and I learned how to be a leader there, and learned how to serve, and had opportunities to serve, and made a lot of friends there. Like the majority of my friends somehow or some way came through that community there. But then I don't know what, not got bored, but we became part of my wife and I, Meg is her name. She's awesome. We became helpers at two churches that were starting up. It was about 2 years at each one, and then we went to an Assembly of God church, and I had a period of time where I wasn't doing that great. I'd gotten disappointed, hurt, distracted, and I didn't handle it very well at all. I mean, I was in the church with my body, but not with my heart. And when I was on my own, I was not doing good. And after a while of that, I knew it was wrong, but all of a sudden I was looking at where I was headed, and it was headed the wrong direction. I was heading away from God, and the things I was doing weren't good, and they weren't helping. I was hurting, but they weren't helping with the hurt. It was just making it worse or extending the healing time. And so I had made a decision to go and basically, I guess, repent, to change the direction I was heading. And I thought that God would forgive me, and He did, of course. But I thought, as far as restoration, that it would be a long time, but it wasn't. I thought I wouldn't be restored back to my previous position, because I was a leader at church. I was Bible study leader. We were serving in jail ministry. If there was a function at church, where they needed help, we were trying to help, because we thought that was, or we felt that was our mission, and that was true for that period of time, and everything was going full speed ahead until this thing happened, and then everything came to a stop. And then when I woke up, or came to my senses and decided to go back home, it was like the prodigal son, because I was back with my heart in church, hearing and listening, and I heard a message. 3 times I heard the same message from 3 different people, and the message was that God still speaks. And it was 3 credible witnesses. A book I was reading by Henry Blackaby called What's So Spiritual About Your Gifts? And then 2 pastor ladies, separate from each other, 2 different churches. One on a CD that Meg gave me to listen to, and another one during discipleship training at the church we were at. They said the same thing, that God still speaks, but He won't speak to you unless you're willing to do what He says. And I there was just a hunger within me to hear God speak, because I had just come off of this dark period of hurting, and it just, excuse me, I just wanted to hear him speak, and then the fact that he won't speak unless you're willing to do what he says caused me to think back to all the stuff I was doing. We were doing mission work already. I'd taken teams to Guatemala and Africa, and took people into the inner city to help out with churches there, and we were doing a lot of stuff, and but none of it God told me to do. And so I was thinking about that. I was like, what was going through my head was people don't want to surrender their lives to God's voice because they're afraid that they might get sent to Africa as missionaries, and then possibility of cannibals getting them, whatever, or their life becoming miserable. But I had been to Africa and we had fun. I went bungee jumping off the bridge in Victoria Falls. That was amazing. And then, so I said, I was at work. I'd heard the third time, God still speaks. And God, I wanted to hear your voice. And yes, send me to Africa. I just want to hear your voice. And when he started speaking, and the first thing he said was, call Meg. And I said, what should I say? And he said, I'll tell you what to say. So I remembered that he'll speak if you'll do what he says, so I just called her up. And I said, all of a sudden I started apologizing to her. Like, God didn't say apologize to her. All of a sudden I started apologizing to her about something she had done, I had forgiven her for, but I kept bringing it up. And I just said, that's wrong. I shouldn't do that. I forgave you, and I keep bringing it up to win arguments and level the playing field, like when I thought she was trying to be the good one and me the bad one, that I would remind her that she's not always the good one. And it was just wrong, I felt, at that moment, and I needed to tell her that I was not going to do it anymore, and that's what I did. And then she said, don't call me, I'm crying, because I was crying when I apologized, and because I really felt like what I was doing was wrong, and I meant it with my heart that I wasn't going to do it again, and I haven't. So I hang up, and I said, what's next? And he said to call Tim, my friend Tim. Him and I were friends for a long time, and in the church, and then he left, and then when I was not doing good, I went and hung out with him, and we were just doing boy stuff for a while, and when I had this awakening that I should wake up and go back to where I was, go back to God and behave myself, basically. I tried to talk him to come with me, and he wouldn't go. He said no. And so then I told God, I said, if I call him, he won't come back. I already tried. You heard, like I was thinking, he had 3 hours I tried to convince him to come back to church and partner with me in the gospel, and he wouldn't. And God said, I'll tell you what to say. And so I called him up, and I started crying. I don't remember if I cried or not, but I remember telling him that I wanted him to come back, and that I understood, his reluctance, and I took responsibility for the part I played in his life. And, I was his leader at church. He was part of the Bible study I was leading, and he left. And then when I went and found him, I took him further away than he was from God, so to speak. And that, where he was partly my fault, and I was sorry. And then if he did decide to come back, that I would be there and holding a place for him. And so then we got off the phone, and I said, what's next? He said, text your buddy Chris, tell him that he's a good father and that you're proud of him. So I did that, and Chris texted me back, I think you sent this to the wrong person. And so I said, no, God told me to tell you this. God told you? It was a very unusual conversation, but over the course of a couple of weeks, God spoke to me, and I wrote them down, and so I remember there was 28 things, and he said things like no politics. And it was during a election time when I was kind of ramped up about a certain candidate, and so for me to just quit politics was a big thing, but it was easy because God told me, and I just became like Switzerland about politics for a while. And then another thing, he told me to read the Bible. And so and the funny thing was, he didn't say read it more, he just said read it, because I wasn't really a student of the Bible. I was more of a follower of those who read the Bible, and I would listen to what they had to say about it, and that's just how it was. I learned a lot from other people reading the Bible, and so I start reading, and I open it up, and it's like I've seen holy on every page, like be holy because I am holy, holy angels, holy this and holy that, and I closed the book as like the Holy Bible. I'm like, holy cow, this thing is about holiness. And that sent me on a tangent to become holy. It's a long story, but I had believed the teaching that we were wicked and evil and that we needed to kill our flesh, and so I went about trying to kill my flesh because I believed the flesh was evil, and I renounced all these things trying to make myself holy, and like no TV, no radio, no And it's not that TV and radio are evil, it's just that I like them, and I thought if I like them, they must be evil. That was the thought. And I mean, it was wrong, but that's what I was thinking at the time. And so I just started eliminating anything I enjoyed: sugar, snacks, TV, like I said. And then I started looking for sin in my life and started trying to root it out. And then I started seeing the sin in everybody else. And I was just shocked at how much rule breaking there is in this world, even in the church. And so I'd gotten, it just went on for a couple of weeks or months actually. And the culmination of it, or the breaking point, if you will, was it had to do with sugar, and I'd given up sugar completely except these granola bars. And I'd given up snacks between dinner and bedtime. And then one day I had the urge between dinner and bedtime to have a snack, and I thought one of them granola bars would be good. So I went over to the cabinet and I opened it up and I started reaching in, and it just dawned on me, you've been fooling yourself. These granola bars are full of sugar, and now you're gonna, you're just fooling yourself. You're doing, you're trying to be holy, but you're fudging in this regard. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I got off track. This is like foolishness. Like, I went too far, is what I was thinking. And so I threw my hands up and I was like, God, how long is this going to go on? And he said very clearly, he says, until you stop fighting with me. And I'm like, fighting with you? I'm like your best guy. I've been cooperating on everything you've told me to do. I've done. And so there was no response. And so then I thought about it. I was still standing in front of the cupboard, and I thought, well, when my will and his will are the same, then the fight will be over. And that's what I wanted, was to be his will and my will the same. So I said, well, keep going. Like, let's keep, no matter how ridiculous it gets, I'm willing. And then he said, okay, now we're done. Like, that's all he wanted, was me to want what he wanted. Not actually do it, but just want it. And I'm like, what do you mean we're done? And he said, everything that I took away, you can have back. And I was like shocked. I was like, what do you, wait. No, like, that can't be. And then I said, well, I like me better this way than the old way. And then he said, that, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. He said, okay, now remember this though, that you're doing this because you want to, not because I told you. So I wasn't being obedient anymore. I wanted what he wanted, not because he told me. So he was showing me grace and what grace looks like. And I thought we were on Holiness Week, but it was Grace Week. And then I remembered someone had tried to tell me about grace, about the effortless transformation of grace instead of trying to be good by doing good. It's just being good by believing right. And so I called that guy up who told me about grace, and I couldn't receive it at that time, but that I did receive it. And but I want to back up a little bit. Now, during all this time, something happened as I was doing what the God was telling me to do. Suddenly I became energized, is a good word for it. Like, it felt like my hands were tingling, or not just my hands, but everything was like vibrating or tingling, and like electricity. And I felt this power in my body, and it was very strange because I didn't know what was causing it. Or, I mean, I knew that I'm doing all this stuff and I'm hearing God and I'm doing, and this, I'm not dumb. I realized that there was a correlation between what was happening and what I was feeling, but I didn't know what it was. And I told Meg, and she said, I think you got filled by the Holy Spirit. And I didn't know anything about the Holy Spirit or being filled or anything like that at that point. So I'm like, I don't even believe in that. And so it was a very strange thing that this was happening. So if you want to hear more of that story, I'll make another video. I think I'm going to make a bunch of them, but I want to end this one because it's 30 minutes now almost. And so if you'd like to hear more, listen to part 2, or yeah. Thanks for listening. And some of you probably heard these stories before, but I wanted to get them recorded so that others could hear them too. All right. Thanks.